Okay, so the first step in doing the self-portrait monotype collage mixed media assignment is to prepare the monotype portion. And so I'm going to show how to do the trace monotype process, and it starts with a good piece of your sketchbook paper. Mine happens to have that perforation thing, so I'm trying to get rid of it. Okay. So you're going to incorporate a self-portrait, but I had these just, in my collage materials, so I thought I would do something from an old poster here. I would do something kind of fun, maybe like a family portrait that would be kind of a strange family portrait. So these are my photocopies, as it were. You can do things out of magazines as well. They work better if they're photocopied though. So I'm going to go ahead and cut these down. I'm just selecting my portraits here. I'll decide how much of that I want to use later. All right, so now I've got my figures. Again, you're going to be creating a self-portrait of some type. If you want to include other people, like your family, if that sort of helps you with your self-portrait concept, that's a great idea. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to prepare the backs of these with some type of a material that I can use to push onto another piece of paper. So I'm going to start with the kid. I'm just sort of thinking roughly about like where his head is, right? And then what color I'd like to print that in. Crayons work well. Oil pastels work probably the best. But we're going to try a lot of different things. You can use graphite pencil as well. You can use colored pencil. I've got some different gouaches and just, chalk pastels, things like that. If it is a chalk pastel, you'll probably have to ensure that you don't wipe it off the paper after you print it. So I'm going to go with like a red-violet kind of thing going on here. And the idea is that I want a lot of media on the back of this. So I'm just going to fill this area. I've got it on another piece of paper just to protect my surface. And do kind of a combination of two colors. Mixing that violet. think I've got him prepared pretty well. So when I print him, then these areas here are going to be more red, and these are going to be more violet. So I'm going to set him aside. Take a moment to kind of think about how I want my arrangement to go. I think I'm going to go with a horizontal orientation because I'm thinking about making this like a family portrait. Well, actually, I could go vertically. That could be interesting. Some kind of a cheesy life touch like photograph thing from the 80s. Kind of like that. It's kind of interesting. Kind of a triangulation of all three of them. That could be fun. What I don't want to do is I don't want to stick something like right in the middle, right? Generally, when we think about composition, we want to think about the rule of thirds. Like if we were to divide our compositional space into thirds, and grid it out like that, we would want to avoid sticking things like right in the middle, right? Or stuck perfectly in these quadrants, unless you were depending on a grid format, like for a very somewhat symmetrical or patterned type of drawing or composition. But for portraiture, what I'm looking at doing here, I'm looking at my intersections, and that's usually what you want. You want important areas to sort of fall in these offset spots, right? Or in alignment with, like, you know, a long sort of line here or an L shape. So if I put this guy kind of like on top of this grid space here, and I sort of put this other figure off in this corner, then maybe instead of sticking him right up in here to create a little bit more interest, I could just pop him right over in the corner, or, you know, try something weird, like, you know, what could it be like if I do this, or, you know, or overlap, right? So think a little bit about that when you're, before you transfer. What will we do with her? I think. Yeah, let's go with some colored pencil here. So I can kind of see through this, which is cool. So I'm targeting some areas, like for some key color. So like, you know, if I wanted to have green eyes, I will add green back here. If you use colored pencil, you have to use a good deal of it. Like, you have to really load it up and add a lot to it, or you're not going to get a very good linear transfer. So like, I'll give her a green eye, maybe green nose. Like, because I don't have a photograph with a bunch of shading in this case, I'm just really worried about the line work that I'm going to be transferring. So I don't have to add transfer media everywhere, right? In that case. Let's just make our whole face green. Let's go for it. Let's do kind of like a almost Monroe type. Super red lips. Christmassy, I guess. Let's see, I think for the sake of for the sake of making things interesting, I think we'll go with blue hair. red, violet. Let's see. Well, let's go red phone anyway. We'll continue some of that red trend happening off of here. Since we're here, we might as well just go with the red hand. I'm doing this on a hard surface. You don't want a textured surface when you do this. So like I've just got board on top of like a shelving unit that I like to use in my studio space. If you do it on a textured surface, you're not going to get a good application of transfer media. Okay, so I've got her prepared. And I think for this gentleman, what shall we do with him? I think I'm just going to use like straight up regular graphite pencil for him. See what I have over here in my studio. That's a good indigo. There we go. Let's see. I think I'm going to use one of these layout ebony pencils that are really dense graphite, because I know that they will lay down like a lot of dark mark. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to like see if I can get a little bit more detail here in this part of the face, and then back here make it a little more hazy. Have a little bit more detail. I need to add more down here. Again, if you want to add more imagery, like the Monotype way, through this trace method, that's fine. But this method also requires some mixed media collage. drawing, painting, do some foil work. A lot of times I like to use nail polish actually on some of my mixed media collage pieces. Please feel free to experiment. All right. I'm liking that pretty well. So we've got our setup. And I was kind of thinking about my composition earlier. If I know that I'm going to have some overlapping involved, like if I'm going to have this figure here and this figure here, and I want this figure to overlap part of this figure, I want to consider transferring this first. That way I can try to avoid that area. I can either stencil that, or I can, got a couple of options that I can do there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay her first and get that figure where I want it. You're going to want to use tape that, you know, it's sticky enough to hold it down, but won't tear the paper when you pull it off. So like I'm just using some regular Scotch tape here. I would tape it in several locations. Although it's not a bad idea to have a situation where you can fold it up and kind of see how your transfer is going. When I do this, I find the best results come from a ballpoint pen because you can really push hard with that. If you have a lot of media on the other side, you don't want to rest your hand down too hard. So you want to kind of be careful. If you're a heavy-handed type of person, you know, you might consider putting an arm down and working this way. But what's nice about the ballpoint pen is that, number one, it's dense on the end. It makes a mark so you can tell where you've already traced. So feel free to apply some pressure here. You could use anything, like a sharp stick or something, but again, I find it's easiest to see where I've already traced. Now maybe I might have a plan in the future or something to, you know, like actually color this in or something. Just kind of depends on what I want to do. So I'll either, you know, transfer that break in value, or I'll scribble that whole thing out. I'll hold it so it doesn't buckle on me. I don't want it to move. A lot of times I'm pretty gestural with this because it gives me some marks that I can work with and I can draw onto. So I like to be pretty free with the process. And when your marks are more swooping and flowing, sort of exude more confidence. Don't look so obviously transferred, as it were. So in printmaking, really, what we're doing as artists is we're figuring out how to create a print from some sort of matrix using some sort of ink on some kind of paper or variations of that. So in this case, we're not using a plate necessarily, just a photocopy. The ink that we apply was the transfer medium we put on the back. I'm gonna go ahead and flip this. Let's take a look and see how it's going. It's looking pretty good. Now, if you had a lot of like extra crumbly business with the colored pencil in here and you push on that, you're gonna see it everywhere. So try to make sure that you don't have all that. If you use crayon and oil pastel, you run a greater risk of having a lot of extra messy color migrating in places you don't want it to be. So you got to be a little bit more careful with that. All right. So now I've got this multicolored gal. I think what I might do is maybe go in and just touch a few areas up where I feel like the lines are, or like maybe where I missed lines. Looks like I missed something here. Yeah, like that. drop this dude over here. Again, I don't want to get a bunch of messiness all over what I've already got because I want to have some overlapping. So, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use this as a stencil. Basically to help stop out and protect that area. I'm going to get fairly close because I can go in later and kind of touch up and clean up. Just want to get a good kind of general shape that I can use to protect that side. That'll work. That way I can just place this right on top. There we go. Looks pretty good. Just want to be mindful that I don't put a bunch of tape over here because that'll stop out the graphite. So I'll do like one. Might be a little bit cleaner. I'll do one down here. We go. All right, now it's time to take the cheesy guy. Sometimes what I do with this situation is I'll add a little bit more graphite into those little areas, like by rubbing it in. Just be mindful. Graphite travels everywhere. It'll make you dirty. All right, so we're gonna put Homeboy about like right there. I'm liking that. Now for this one, because I'm probably going to go in and do a lot more shading and drying stuff on him, I think I'm going to use just a sharp colored pencil, like this blue one, to transfer. And I'm going to be very mindful about touching this one because I will transfer a lot on accident. So I'll probably start back here just to keep my hand back a little bit. Gonna take a peek under here and see how much of that's actually, yeah, it's not gonna make it over there at all. So really I should be over here, concentrating more. Do just a little shading here. A little bit of shading in here, so I'm just gonna kind of like lightly press. Get my contour. This one is going to be quite a bit lighter, maybe a little more difficult to see. Sometimes you got to go over it a few times. I'm going to take a look and see what we're getting, though. Yeah, pretty light, but it's going to give me something to work with. So, like, if you wanted to do more in the way of kind of drawing and actually going in and doing some practice rendering, maybe drawing that self-portrait, you want to do a light transfer with graphite. Just treat it like carbon paper. And the nice thing about the graphite situation is if something transfers, you don't like it, you can erase it. So if you've got like a photograph that you wanted to do this with, right? Say a family photograph of yourself, something like that. You'd want to probably do make a photocopy of that. All right, let's take a look. Well, pretty light. I think I have enough to go off of though. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull that off. So now I have these kind of weird circa 1970s mom and dad. And I'm just gonna do a little bit of sketching in here just to clean some stuff up, make it to where I can see it a little bit better. Because if I smudge it or something, I might lose some details, you know. Okay, so I've got these two ready. Now I'm going to go ahead and drop this little guy in there. Now he's kind of strange again because he's cut off here. I almost wonder, could be kind of interesting to make him a float.